All right, so moving on to the next segment. I'll be sharing my top players under the most pressure to win a NBA title this NBA postseason. There's a lot of players that, for their legacies, they need to go out there and help their team win a championship. And I do believe these respective players are under the most pressure to help their respective franchises make an effort to win an NBA championship this NBA postseason. Player number one, James Harden. James Harden to me is a top five shooting guard of all time, one of the greatest scorers in the 21st century. And he's in the conversation for being one of the greatest regular season players in NBA history. Going back to his days with the Houston Rockets, this man was an offensive juggernaut, and will never. And those days will never be forgotten for James Harden's legacy. But he has never been able to deliver when it matters most in the NBA playoffs, and he has a history of this. The 76ers traded to get James Harden for a reason a year ago to help Joel Embiid give it over the hump, and the Philadelphia 76ers give it over the hump and win and bring a championship to Philadelphia. He played horrible in the playoffs last year. There's no and ifs or doubts about that. There's no excuses for James Harden the way how he played last year in NBA playoffs. You're supposed to be Joel Embiid's tag team partner. They went out and got you in a trade last year for a reason. And he wet the bed last year in the playoffs. He played horrible. He only averaged 18 points per game, 8 assists, 5 rebounds in 12 playoff games last NBA season. I need more from a former MVP. I just said in my opinion, he's the top 5 shooting guard of all time. Definitely needs to show more. But he had a good outing in Game 1 last Saturday against the Brooklyn Nets. He scored 23 points and 13 assists, so that's a good start to his playoff campaign this NBA season. I'm expecting a lot from James Harden to help Philadelphia chase a championship this year. And this is really what matters most. This is why you brought the Philly to help Joel Embiid and the 76ers get over hump. Don't be the reason why, again, like you were last year, that they do not get a championship or at least make it to the Eastern Conference Finals this year because of bad playoff play from James Harden. He's definitely under a lot of pressure. Player number 2, Chris Paul. Chris Paul is a certified Hall of Famer. He's definitely one of the greatest point guards of all time. And definitely would be icing on a cake. Be the icing on the cake to his Hall of Fame NBA career if he could at least get one NBA championship before it's all said and done. Just like James Harden, Chris Paul has had a hard time showing up in the playoffs when it matters most during his illustrious NBA career. His role is still very important despite the fact that Kevin Durant is in town for the Phoenix Suns. They have Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, two great NBA scorers. Definitely bring a lot to the table on a nightly basis when it comes to their scoring abilities. But Chris Paul still has a vital, important role in this NBA playoffs. He still has to be a good floor facilitator, and when his number is called, score the points that's needed to help the Phoenix Suns go on a deep NBA playoff run. He still, I do believe that Chris Paul getting up there in age, he's already 37, and he'll be 38 in a few weeks. I do believe that this is one of Chris Paul's final chances to win an NBA championship in his NBA career. I can see the Phoenix Suns moving off of Chris Paul if he does not deliver, and is one of the reasons why they are sent home without getting to a Western Conference Finals appearance or getting to the NBA Finals. I do believe that Chris Paul is under a lot of pressure to succeed, and his championship window is closing. It's almost closed. He doesn't have many moments left in his gas tank. Chris Paul needs to deliver and help the Phoenix Suns go on a deep playoff run. He's under a lot of pressure. Player number 3, Nikola Jokic. Nikola Jokic is already a former two-time MVP. Right now, the reigning back-to-back MVP could be on his way to winning his 3rd straight MVP in the last 3 NBA seasons. He's considered a top 5 player on the planet as we speak today. He can do it all. He's a great shooter. He's a great floor facilitator, passing the ball. Has a great basketball IQ, and he's a great rebounder. But in Jokic's young career, he has yet to make an NBA Finals appearance and has not gotten to the Western Conference Finals since 2020. Injuries have been the reason why the Nuggets have not made it back to the Western Conference since 2020. But there's no excuse this year for the Nuggets. They are the number one seed in the conference for a reason. They have their entire roster healthy from their starting five all the way to their depth. I do believe they have the most depth in the Western Conference to go on a deep playoff run. And having home court advantage with the playoffs traveling through Denver, as long as they are still in the race, there's no excuse why Jokic cannot get to the NBA Finals this NBA season. So definitely Jokic is under a lot of pressure to help the Nuggets succeed in their quest to winning an NBA championship this year. Final player on my list, Trae Young. It might not seem fair that Trae Young is on my list, but if you remember, in 2021, Trae Young helped the Atlanta Hawks get to the Eastern Conference Finals. Seems like a long time ago, but they were there just a few seasons ago. During that run, he became a villain, the most hated guy to ever play in Madison Square Garden in New York City, sending the New York Knicks home. He ended the era of Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons in Philadelphia when he sent them home in the second round of the playoffs. And were there in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Milwaukee Bucks just 2 seasons ago. Was this a fluke run? We don't know. And last year in the playoffs, they were the 8th seed and were eliminated by the Miami Heat. They were gentlemen swept by the Miami Heat. So, was that run a fluke? We don't know. And right now they got their butts kicked by the Boston Celtics in Game 1 of the NBA playoffs on the road in Boston. It's not looking like they're going to win this series. This is obviously a David versus Goliath matchup with the Hawks matching up against the Boston Celtics in the first round. I do believe that Trae Young needs to look effective enough to show that he is that superstar, that he is that caliber player that a lot of people believe that he is. He doesn't have to. Obviously, I don't see them winning this series, and it's a bad matchup. But you gotta look more effective at least in a losing effort than what you did in Game 1, because Trae Young only had 16 points in Game 1 against the Celtics. He shot the ball 5 for 18 from the field, 1 for 5 shooting from the three-point range in Game 1 against the Boston Celtics. That's not a good show that you belong long-term with the Atlanta Hawks that's already been throwing you in the mix for trade discussions for this NBA offseason. So Trae Young is not under pressure to win a championship, but he's under pressure for his legacy. He's under pressure to prove that he can be an effective player for sake of his NBA future, and that his playoff run not too long ago was not a fluke. This could be also a audition for Trae Young to audition for other teams if he is traded this NBA offseason. So Trae Young needs to go out there and give a great effort in a losing effort, because I don't see them winning this series at all. I think they have the potential of being swept. It's a David versus Goliath matchup. But those are the players for me to succeed the most in the NBA playoffs and to help their team. These players are under the most pressure to win an NBA championship this NBA postseason.